Well, hey there, campers, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Camp Cryptid. I'm your host, Erica Fett, and this week I am so excited to be doing part 2 of the United States Lake and Sea Monsters and Cryptids. Last week I did touch base on the East Coast, and this week I'm going to be talking about some of those monsters that are located on the West Coast. So what I tried to do is I basically took the United States and I split it right in half. Last week I did the East Coast, and this week I will be doing the West Coast. Every single state has so many cryptids, and especially so many lake monsters and sea monsters. So it's been hard for me to touch base on every single little cryptid that exists. So with that being said, hopefully this will be an episode that I do a little follow-up on with more of those little lake and sea cryptids that we all love. I'm very excited though because, like I said, there are so many cryptids in each state, and each state has pretty much got, it's like one little lake monster that has like some folklore and legends and urban legends about. And so I've been really excited to kind of touch base on some of these because some of these I've heard of and a lot of them I have not heard of. So this was a fun little like deep dive into the lore and legends of some of those mysterious lake creatures that exist in the United States. Now, if you've ever been to a random pond or lake that you've been swimming in, I'm sure if you have been swimming at night or even during the day, and as you jump in, you're in this like murky little pond or lake, and then you jump down and you feel something wiggly and slimy come up against you. I was in one of those situations where I had a pond where I used to live. You know, you jump off the diving board and you jump into this pond, and then you are in the water and you feel all these little fish coming up against you, and like bluegill, especially if you've been around bluegill, those things feel so gross. And their little spiny fins are very, very tricky. But you know, when you think about like catfish, some of these larger fish that could exist in these ponds, it kind of gets kind of creepy when you start to think about, well, how big can some of these get? And so over the years, you know, I think that some of these sightings have gone from where you take a look at it, and if it was in like the late 1700s, early 1800s, you're like, okay, well, that could have been a giant sturgeon, or that could have been a giant catfish, because as I was researching for last week, I noticed that there were some of these lakes where afterwards someone found like a 7-foot catfish in it, and I'm like, okay, well, that could explain a lake monster. You know, if you think about a 7-foot catfish, that thing is probably pretty terrifying if you think about it. And you know what? I think if there was a 7-foot catfish, I think it's safe to say that that thing could be considered a monster in a lake, right? But, you know, I was really excited to kind of jump into these because I live on, well, I want to say the Midwest, but I'm going to lump myself in with the East Coast on this one. I'm an East Coast girl. And even in Ohio, we had Bessie. So kind of getting to dive into some of these monsters and lake legends has been really, really fun, especially on the West Coast. Because like I said, there were a few of these that I've heard of, but a lot of these I have never heard of before in my life. So it's always fun to learn about new little monsters out there. Maybe one of these days I'll compile a list of everything and then put a little map of the United States with every single little lake monster that could exist for states. So that's maybe, you know, that'll be on the list to do. But first, I'd like to start out with one in Arizona. And I visited Arizona when I was a little girl, but this was so long ago. I mean, I might have been like 3, so I don't remember it, but I have been to Arizona. And so I was really excited because I was like, with Arizona having so unique canyons and valleys and caves, what would the lake monsters be looking like in Arizona? And I found a really neat one that I wanted to talk about today, and it's called skinfin. Now, skinfin is awesome. Skinfin is located in Lake Powell in Arizona, and it's said to be called skinfin because it appears to be a giant fish with a black, oily body shaped just like an elephant, but it has a giant dorsal fin. Now, this also led some people to believe that those sightings of skinfin were actually of a shark, which we'll get into later. But this added to some legends of a giant creature lurking in the depths of Lake Powell. Now, other sightings suggest that the body of skinfin was more like a manatee, and it had a long neck like a brachiosaurus. The most famous sighting was in the 1950s when a young boy was almost attacked by what they thought to be skinfin. So the father and son described this creature with having a giant fin and also that it had like giant teeth. Well, this also was pretty creepy and made a lot of people feel like definitely there was a creature there. And it didn't help that months later, a decaying, strange, large corpse was found off the shore of Lake Powell. Now, after they sent the corpse away to be tested on, they found that the corpse turned out to be the body of a black-tip shark. So it might be safe to say that skinfin was a shark, but also there have been sightings that kind of are different from what people saw and associate with skinfin. So I think that that is interesting too. Now, no matter what descriptions may say, and no matter what corpse was found, some locals of the area say a monster still could be lurking deep in the depths of Lake Powell, especially after many people over the years have still seen strange things in the water. Now, Lake Powell has many outlets, and it is 550 feet deep in some locations. So who knows what else could be lurking, in the depths of Lake Powell. But I did think that one was really fun. And it is strange that the sightings still continued after they found this decaying corpse. So if you live around Lake Powell and you have any sightings or you have anything to add about good old skinfin, I'd love to hear it. Now, the next one I was really excited about because I didn't realize that this little lake had a cryptid associated with it and attached to it. So I'm really excited to get into this next one. So this next one is located at Lake Tahoe. And a lot of you have probably heard of Lake Tahoe because it is absolutely gorgeous. This is one that you see on Instagram, and it's got like the clear water where you can see all the different colored rock. Oh, it's absolutely beautiful. And it's set in the Sierra Nevada region, which for some of you, if you are, into the lore and scariness of regions, Sierra Nevada is also where the Donner Party had its fateful last moments. And there's actually a lake not too far away from Lake Tahoe called the Donner Lake. So that region is full of a lot of weirdness. Also, the Sierra Sounds. If you are familiar with any Bigfoot lore, the Sierra Sounds is the region where a couple of hunters that were way off the grid, like we're talking like in the middle of nowhere in this region, were out on their hunting trip. And at night they heard chatter, which is called, which I think they dubbed it samurai chatter, that was supposedly these beings that they don't know if were Bigfoot or people or what out in the region that were talking back and forth to each other. And if you've never heard of the Sierra Sounds, I highly recommend after this episode, you either pause this right now and go listen, or you, after this episode, you go check out a YouTube video. I'll try to post it on Reddit too, so that you have a easy access to where it is. But the Sierra Sounds is a very, very creepy and unnerving set of vocals. So if you've never heard of those, please go check those out. They're so cool. And also, I always say, please, when you go out hiking or anywhere remote, please be safe. Please take a GPS device. Please take extra water rations. Just be safe because, especially in this region, it does get very, very cold and the weather can change unexpectedly. So please just take care of yourselves out there. But to go back to the creepiness of Lake Tahoe, I'm really excited about this one. So Lake Tahoe has a little cryptid that they call Tessy, and I love that. I love this play on the Loch Ness Monster, and I think it's so fun. And before this, I'd only heard about how incredibly gorgeous the lake is, so I'm excited to kind of talk about what I found about Tessy. But I didn't realize that there is folklore around Lake Tahoe. And this folklore is about a 60-foot snake-like creature that is said to inhabit the lake and roams between the underground cave systems that are located in it. Now, Lake Tahoe is crazy deep, though. I did not, I said earlier about Lake Powell being over 500 feet deep. And, in the last episode, I was talking about, whoa, it's over like 150 feet deep. That's pretty deep. No, Lake Tahoe is on another level. There are areas that get over 1,500 feet deep in Lake Tahoe. And to think that you add in these underwater caves in the mix, it's crazy. It's wild. Now, divers have found vast cave systems at the bottom of Lake Tahoe, and stories of Lake Tahoe's bottom being full of preserved corpses doesn't help the spooky stories either. But because of how cold this lake is, it preserves the bodies pretty well. Now, apparently, even if the weather is gorgeous out, Lake Tahoe is still frigid to swim in. So I thought that the idea of Tessy being there and swimming and using the underground cave systems was really fun and really creepy, and I loved it. When I was doing my research for this, it was kind of hard because I would come across a creature and then, as I was researching and so excited, I would find out, oh, wait, it was a hoax. So that's kind of what happened with the Bear Lake monster up in Utah and Idaho on the border there, because Bear Lake kind of splits the two, I believe. But the Bear Lake monster is a fun one. And even though it turned out to be a hoax, after like 25 years of the person like going with it and finally coming out and say it was a hoax, people still have sightings of things in the water, and the community still kind of celebrates Bear Lake for having its little monster. So I think that's kind of fun. Now, the next one I wanted to talk about is Flathead Lake monster, which is found in Montana. Now, there are written reports about a large unknown creature hanging out in this lake that have existed since prior to the 1800s. It was told in tales even before then with the native tribes of the area. But one of the more popular sightings of the Flathead Lake monster, when a steamboat captain and its 100 passengers saw what appeared to be a very large creature in the water below around the boat. Now, stories say that a passenger ended up shooting at it and it fled, but there were a lot of people who saw a creature that day. So locals called the Flathead monster Flossie. Now, according to reports, Flossie is a large eel snake-like creature that ranges between 20 and 50 feet long. Now, there are over 100 reports of a creature that have happened since the 1800s, with sightings still going on to this day. So there are a lot of sightings of the Flathead Lake monster, which I think is really, really cool. Montana has a lot of cryptids as well, so I think this one was a really cool one too. And I do think it's really crazy how a lot of the cryptids in the water are just giant sea snakes, basically. Like, they're just these giant snakes. And the thing is we know that snakes can swim. We know that there's water snakes. We know that there are eels. So would it be too far off to think that there was a giant creature that could have existed, prior to huge population rises and people, infringing on their habitats? Do we think that it's really out of the question that there could have been in one of these lakes, at least one of them? I'm not saying all of them, but at least one of them, that one of these creatures could have still existed. So I think that is really fun to think about. And I had talked last episode on the East Coast monsters, how on Blackwell's Island, they did find like a giant serpent that was in the water, and it was documented. And I think that is kind of like, I'm holding on to that as my crutch for there being more lake monsters. But it also, like I said earlier, like when you jump into a pond and you feel a little fish, it is kind of scary, because even though your mind is like, oh, it's totally a fish. What if it's not? And now I'm creeped out and will never go swimming again in a pond. Now, there are other cryptids that I haven't talked about, like there's Charlie in Idaho. There's the North Shore monster of the Utah Great Salt Lake, which is really cool. Now, one of them that I really wanted to talk about was Ogopogo. And this is one I have heard about, and I knew it was a lake monster. I knew it was some kind of like serpent monster, but I really didn't know much about it. Now, Ogopogo is off the coast of Canada. But I thought, you know what, since we're neighbors, I might as well include one of these Canadian little lake monsters in, because I think that this one can still be seen kind of off the coast of the Pacific Northwest too. So I feel like I'm going to lump it in. Okay. I'll definitely do a Canadian one because Canada's got some really groovy cryptids and lake monsters. So and lots of Bigfoot sightings. So I got to do a Canadian cryptids episode one of these days, but for now, we'll just talk about this little snake-like creature called Ogopogo. Now, this creature has been involved in mythology and folklore since the earliest days of people settling in that area. Many sightings of this snake-like creature have happened off the shores of McKinley Beach, with more sightings happening every single year. The long-standing mythology and hundreds of sightings make this sea cryptid one of the most popular of the cryptids. In fact, there was at one time $1 million reward for anyone who could find actual evidence that Ogopogo existed. Now, Ogopogo is a giant sea cryptid that's snake-like, so it is over 20 feet supposedly and resembles a giant sea serpent. Some people say it has flippers, some people say it's just a giant long, curvy sea snake with that has humps out of the water. So, I mean, when it comes to a lot of these sightings of cryptids, they do have a lot of varying descriptions, which over time, you've got hundreds of years of stories. And whether it's actual, sightings of something in the water that's a creature, or whether it's debris like logs or other debris in the water, it's hard to say with a lot of these. But I think it's really cool that people embrace the legends of these sea cryptids and still to this day celebrate the folklore and legends of the areas that existed over, hundreds of years. Which, I always say that in every episode. I get so excited when people celebrate the folklore and celebrate, the long-standing stories of these cryptids and creatures. And I love it when people make them like their mascots. Like when I went to Sleepy Hollow, I loved that they used the Headless Horseman for everything. I love that Cleveland has the Lake Erie Monsters, the Jersey Devils. I mean, how much cooler can you get than that? I mean, isn't there like a Seattle team that's a Kraken now? I love that. I absolutely love that. So I love people just embracing the world around them and embracing, stories of these creatures that could exist. It's my favorite. It's my absolute favorite thing. But yeah, like I said, though, like there are a million of these sea cryptids and creatures all over the world. And, in the United States, we've got, 50 states and then territories, and every single state has some kind of lake monster or some kind of urban legend around some kind of creature hanging out in the lake, or some kind of aquatic creature in general. I mean, Ohio has Bessie, but we also have the Loveland Frogman, and we also have the Crosswick Monster, which was like a swamp monster back in the day. So, and I'm sure if I take a deep research day and just kind of look around, I'm sure Ohio has a million things. And just like every other state has, which I think is really, really fun. But like I said, that's why I was like, I could talk about sea cryptids for like 4 hours. But then it's like, I really honestly love when you guys have like input too. So for anybody listening, if you're on the West Coast or the East Coast, or if you're anywhere in the world, I guess for that matter, if you have a local story of a sea cryptid or a lake monster or any type of weird aquatic creature around you, please let me know. I'm like dying to do a follow-up on these already, because like I said, there were so many, and I was doing research and there were some where I was like, oh, this is really cool, and then it turned out to be a hoax and I was like, why? But yeah, it was really fun. I really, really liked it. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. I mean, like I said, Ogopogo is one I could probably do an entire episode on, because it's been around for literally hundreds of years. And, but that one is one that I had to include on the West Coast because it was really, really cool. But, just talking about Lake Tahoe and the creepiness around there in that region, and then adding in that they think, there's been sightings of this giant creature that just is hanging around maybe in the lake, or just, taking caves, from place to place. That's kind of cool too. So with that being said, if you have any input, or if you have any creatures you'd like to add to my list and that you'd like to hear a little bit on in a future episode, please do let me know, because I have so much fun reading about these little lake monsters, and I think it's so cool. And like I said, if you've ever been swimming and you feel something brush up against you, oh my word, it is so creepy. And even though you're like in your mind, you're like, there is a 100% chance that there is a fish around me, adding in the lore of different lake creatures that could, exist and evolve over the years is always fun to kind of like dabble with. So, let's dabble a little bit in those cryptids. Now, other than, researching a lot of these little lake monsters, I have had a lot of fun watching and catching up with some of the newer movies and television shows out there. So I have been for some reason, I am on like a religious movie kick right now. I have been binging religious horror movies, and I watched Immaculate, and I thought that was a very dark movie, and I really enjoyed that. But yeah, I have been binging so much religious horror lately, and like I said, Immaculate was really good. But like growing up Catholic, anything with like nuns and priests and demons and any of that lore just freaks me out totally. So I am a huge fan of religious horror, which is why I like, even though like the Pope's Exorcist weren't like the most like amazing top tier movies, I enjoyed the hell out of it, and I can't wait for them to make more, because I love movies about possessions and exorcisms and demons and all of that. So I love it. I also watched The Sun, which is, or maybe it's just called Sun, but it was on Shudder, and it was also kind of a religious horror based on like cults. And that one was really good. I really enjoyed that one. It was super creepy. Well, when you add in cults and then that religious aspect, I really think that gets like super, like uber creepy. And I love that. I'm trying to think of anything else. Oh, anthology wise, y'all know I love my anthologies, and I cannot recommend Satanic Hispanics more. Like, it is so good, so enjoyable. And I'm really, really, really hoping that they're working on a second one of those. If you're looking for a great anthology, look at Satanic Hispanics. It was so good. Now, other than that, I have watched a few new movies. There was a movie called Blackout, and it was a movie about a werewolf. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that I am absolutely obsessed with werewolf movies. I talk about how I want more Howling movies all the time, and I do. I want more werewolf movies. I think there needs to be so many more. I think there needs to be about 1 million per year. And I love the Howling movies, even though like they get so corny and silly. I love them. I grew up watching them like all the time on Sci-Fi, and I think they used to play on the USA Network all the time too. I don't know, but all I know is that I still love those movies to this day, and I'm almost 40, so give me more werewolf movies. But I watched this movie called Blackout. It's a new movie, and I really enjoyed it. I love werewolf movies, and that is one that I watched recently too. So if you're looking for a werewolf movie, and I really liked what they did with animations with it. So when you watch it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But that one was really good if you're looking for a werewolf movie. Now, what I cannot recommend more than anything in this world is Fallout. If you're looking for a good sci-fi, like post-apocalyptic, look no further. Fallout was so good. And the thing is my husband has never played the games. I've only played Fallout 4, and I was joking around how I played the mobile game Fallout Shelter. But you don't need to play the games at all to enjoy this series. You know, while there's tons of Easter eggs for people who did play the games, I don't think that it's necessarily something that's going to be like, you have to play the games to enjoy this. Absolutely not. In fact, I hope that people watch Fallout who have never played the games, and then it inspires them to play the games. So that's my hope. And I need to go back through and play like Fallout New Vegas. I need to play Fallout 3. I just need to go back through and play them all. I have them on my Steam right now. So I just need to go back through and play them. But Fallout is so good. It's so enjoyable. And, when you think about like post-apocalyptic futures, I think that, it's really cool. And it's a really good story. And I love that like desert vibe. Like I love like the Wild West being brought to the future. And I just think it's overall, it's been so enjoyable. And I'm already fiending for season 2. And I'm so happy it got renewed. And I'm happy to see my girl from Yellow Jackets in it. So we love that. But I also ordered a vault suit, so I will be cosplaying from Fallout soon. I kind of want to set up an area in my shoot area to be like almost like an apocalyptic like vault feel, but we'll see. But other than that, that's what I've been watching. I do have a couple things that I've been on the lookout for. Late Night with the Devil. I watched Late Night with the Devil. How could I forget that? I'm sitting here talking about all of these movies I've been watching and all this religious horror, and how could I forget that I watched Late Night with the Devil? I really enjoyed that one. Like I said, I love possession, like religious horror, so that one I really, really, really enjoyed. Other than that, though, other than, binging Fallout and, playing some World of Warcraft and, staying on top of like cosplay ideas and fun shoots, that's pretty much all I've been up to, other than, researching these cool little lake cryptids. So in the meantime, though, I will be working on another episode of Campfire Tales. So if you have any spooky stories you'd like to add or tell me for a future episode of Campfire Tales, please go to campcryptidpod.com. There's a little contact section where you can let me know your spooky story. And those spooky stories can be everything from a paranormal event to you were out researching an abandoned building and you found something weird, to cryptid sightings, to whatever is weird and creepy out there. Please send in a message. I love to hear your stories. I love to bond with all of y'all over all of the creepiness that's happening in the world. But yeah, so hey, if you listen to any of these episodes and you like them, or you are enjoying what I'm doing so far, don't forget to go give me a little review on Apple or Spotify. Make sure to rate it. I have a lot of fun doing these, and even though they're like very casual, I just, like I said in the last episode, it's so fun to read about all of this creepy stuff that I do deep dives on anyways. So this is one of my favorite things to do throughout the week. So and that's why I love Campfire Tales too, because then I get to read your stories and I'm like, ooh, more creepiness for me to just ingest, and I love it. But with that being said, hey, I hope your week has been going great so far. I hope you're watching lots of good movies, eating lots of good food, enjoying some good weather. And hey, until next time, take care.